Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to session 2 at Digital Energy Summit 2021, where we have 3 fantastic presentations lined up for you. During each of our presentations, you, the audience, have the opportunity to pose questions to any of our speakers. We'll have a short Q&A at the end of each presentation. To ask a question, simply use the chat facility built into the platform. If for any reason any of you cannot see or access this, drop me a message on the platform chat facility and I'll happily relay that to our speakers. As a reminder, you can speak with our exhibitors and sponsors in our virtual exhibition hall throughout the course of the day. Our first speaker today is Akil Ajazi, Lead Product Manager at OpenText. OpenText are an industry leader in information management software and have some fantastic case studies with the likes of Marathon Oil, Tecnimont, and Neptune Energy. Akil's presentation is titled Change in Philosophy, moving from a project structure to an operations structure. As a reminder, you can speak to OpenText throughout the day in the virtual exhibition hall. For now, Akil, over to you.
Thanks, Ben. Hello, everyone. Morning. My name's Akil Ajazi. Been based up in Aberdeen for the last 15 years. Worked in information management for the last 15 odd years with a number of operators in the information management area. I joined OpenText last year in November as a lead product manager. And today's talk, as I said in the title, is a change of philosophy. What I've seen within the industry is that a lot of the companies seem to be in a projects structure where everything is project based. However, operations is where we need to be looking, because a project is for maybe 4 or 5 years. However, operations could be for the next 15 to 20 years. So really, that's what my whole philosophy on the change and how operations should maybe look at this and how to handle this and how OpenText can assist with this. So I'll just move on to the next slide, which is just my when it opens. Introduction. So I'll be talking about document control, and that's really talking about controlled documents and uncontrolled documents in a single repository, and also the key feature of engineer enablement. And that really talks about less reliance on document controllers and more reliance on engineers to facilitate and really kick off reviews and approvals of deliverables. Also talk about Supplier Exchange. That's something that's a built-in feature within the OpenText engineering tool, which allows change management and external collaboration with suppliers. The next point, asset navigation, really a key feature within the data management of an asset, and that really shows us how we can data scrape in-house as well as hotspot. And the last bit really is about plant maintenance, the integration with the brownfields, within brownfield sites. Yes, greenfields are brilliant to have because everything's new, everything's fresh. But in reality, especially in the North Sea, brownfields are the reality now. There are a lot more brownfield projects than there are greenfield projects. So if I just move on to my first slide, and this really talks about in any operators or any company that runs a project, they have their own flavor of these in this cycle of a project. So you have a design phase, a construct phase, commissioning, handover, operate, maintain, and modify. So they may have different versions or flavors of this. However, in reality, they're all there or thereabouts in the same, fit in the same way. And really, there's a handover process every time from a design to a construct to commissioning to handover, and so on. And that could mean a different supplier or a different EPC in the next phase. So really, it's all about the handover, making handover seamless, all the way up to operate and maintain and modify. This also would allow concurrent engineering to happen, especially in brownfield projects, if 2 projects have to work on the same part of the facility or same area of the facility. So that also allows this. And then there's also something like a CAD Manager, which has inbuilt plugins for AutoCAD and Autodesk applications that allow you to save back into the repository. And also I think taking into consideration as well reference documents like technical queries, handover certificates, procedures, dossiers, they can also be managed within the single system. So I guess that's what this whole thing is talking about, is that you have capital projects, but you have information handover straight into asset of the operations, all in a single system, without really leaving, without having to have handovers at each stage into a different system. And it makes sure it reduces the rework that people have to do, that projects have to do at each phase just to get a decision, or if there's a investment required at each decision gate. And those deliverables have to be at a certain stage. It really cuts down on the rework on that. I do have some marketing stuff further down here. The application that I'm going to be talking about is really extended ECM for engineering. Yes, we do have other applications like Core for Capital Projects. We have Core for Building Information Manual, BIM, and as I've mentioned before, Supplier Exchange, which I will talk about in my next few slides. Okay, so if I move on, document control, a core, what I found within the operations and the operators in the North Sea, documents really are the key sort of milestone, key figure within the company. So within extended ECM for engineering, we have a document control solution, and the key factor here, and this is where it goes back to my title about operations to projects. What you have here is that you have a master document workspace, which is regarded as a vault. So that really is operations. That's where the operations numbering and all that kind of stuff happens within there. And that's what is owned by operations. The whole system is actually owned and managed by operations, because that's where the master workspace, the vault, is. Any work that needs to be done, what happens is you check out the deliverables or the documents into a project workspace. So you're just seamlessly moving from the operations straight into a project workspace, and that's where all the collaboration starts to happen. All the deliverables start to be worked on, and then also you have the possibility to send out transmittals to suppliers to allow them to see the deliverable or work on a deliverable and check it back into the project workspace for the project team to be able to review, approve those deliverables. And once the whole project has got to a stage where it's ready to hand over back to the operations, again, seamlessly, those deliverables are put back into their place in the master workspace, and operations are fully aware of what's happened to those deliverables, what they've been worked on, what changes have been made, and when they've been redline marked up and straight back into the vault. So that really gives the operations a full view of exactly what's happening on their system, what's happening on the deliverables, and who's working on which deliverable at what stage. And this is where the concurrent engineering, because you may have one deliverable being checked out for many projects, and that really allows for visibility of concurrent engineering. And that, so when it comes to checking back in, a seamless sort of roundtable discussion can be had between all the engineers and operations to get the deliverable back into the vault. And just bear in mind that when a document or deliverables or a work pack is set up and it's all checked out into a project workspace, potentially the project workspace could have its own unique sort of document number or identifier or project identifier. Again, not a problem, because when it's checked back into the master workspace deliverable retains its original document numbering, but it has a reference within there telling you where it's been and who's been worked on that specific deliverable. So this is just a heads-up display. You have the list of transmittals, assignments, status reports. These are all customizable tiles, and this can be, to however you want to work on this. But what I'm really trying to show here is that it's a single repository, and traditionally companies have always had a document control solution, the likes of ASI or others like even Documentum, which is also under the OpenText. They've always had those, but then they've had a separate repository for uncontrolled documents. So it could be like the likes of SharePoint being used for uncontrolled documents, and then when they become controlled, they get put into the document control solution. Whereas in this solution that we have here is you have your master, which is your operations, you have your project, and you can also have your uncontrolled deliverables within the same repository, so they can be shared easily and seamlessly. Next slide, talk about Supplier Exchange, as I hinted on there. So a project is working on a set of deliverables, and those deliverables then need to be shared out to an external supplier. They can be done via a transmittal. The transmittal is sent out to the supplier, telling them that these deliverables, or they need to deliver these amount of deliverables, and they have a full visibility of those. And then they can, once they've worked on those deliverables, they can then check those back into the once they made their comments, or if they've updated those deliverables, they can check them back into the workspace, the project workspace, and that gives the operator visibility on what they've shared with the supplier, and it also allows the supplier to know exactly what his tasks are, what's outstanding, and what's been delivered, and vice versa for the operator. And this really, the key thing here is what I found in the industry is the operators tend to find out when there's a problem when it's a bit too late. So reporting comes into the fold here. However, there's visibility on both sides that the operators knows exactly how many deliverables are still outstanding. So if there are any issues on, I know operators and suppliers have weekly meetings, they can highlight these, that to say, look, if we go by what you're expected to deliver and what you've actually delivered at the moment, we do foresee some bottlenecks coming along. So, is it a resource issue, or what's the issue? Can we talk about, can we have a look at it to make sure that we're going to deliver a project on time? Also, when we do share documents and deliverables with suppliers, we can have WBS code or a contract number that can specify exactly what the supplier is supposed to deliver and what's within their project. So again, this takes away the need for huge email attachments from document control or from the operators to send out to these suppliers, and then if the emails can't get through, they have to make available a shared drive or an extranet area where they can drop the documents. This really is a seamless way where with the transmittal, the documents go in and the supplier comes in, gets a notification, comes into their area workspace, and then downloads the documents and deliverables, works on them, uploads them back into the system, and the operator sees visibility of those. And this really becomes key in when I spoke about the different decision gates within a project. Sometimes one supplier could be used until the design phase, and then the construct phase, you could have another supplier coming in. And again, very easy. You remove the user access for the old supplier, you create the new logins for the new supplier, and you're away seamlessly within the same system. Right, so that's Supplier Exchange. Next, I'll move on to the asset navigation. And this is really looking at the data side of your asset or build-up of the digital asset within the system. Now, again, if it's a greenfield project, great, everything's new, everything's fresh. So you're building up your tag library, and you're building up your asset libraries and all that kind of stuff. However, if you're not in that luxury of having that, and as we're seeing quite a lot in the North Sea now, assets are being purchased by other operators, and all you're getting across a lot of the time is just documents or drawings. This is where really the asset navigation allows you to extract extract data tags from drawings and documents, right, in-house. I think I have to specify that you can do this in-house with the application. That means you don't have to go to a third-party offshore, the likes of L&T, where they have to data scrape all your drawings at each decision gate and then give you the information back, and then you've got that for a limited time, and then when you move on to the next stage or the deliverables updated, your data's out of date. So really, this really allows you as the operator within in-house to keep your data and your documents up to date in a single system, and it allows you also to hotspot within there. So it allows you to move around the system from the deliverables using tags as reference or equipment lists in that way, and then you can link that to your business workspace, your Maximo or SAP, either or, that you may use for your maintenance systems. You've got the automatic hotspot, as we talked about here, and I think I mentioned before, it's about moving away seamlessly from the drawings back to the data or your or your maintenance workspace. Okay, so if I just click onto that, there's a hotspotted deliverable. Once you click on the deliverable, really allows you to move into your workspaces, and there you've got your front end for your landing page for the data and how you can set that up, and that's also customizable as well, but it allows you to move within the system and really look at these in that way, and you have the dynamic links to documents, drawings, exactly, and within there. Okay, so if I move on, really this is my last slide. So this is really the extended ECM for engineering landing page. Up at the top left hand side, the three tiles, you've got them, that's your data. Depending on how you would like to view that. You've got your recently accessed information, your deliverables, you've got your assignments, workflow tracking as well. And then the key ones here is you've got your master, the vault, which holds all your deliverables, visible and operations sort of ready. And then you've got your project workspaces where you've got connections from the operation side into the project side. And really what I'm kind of describing here is what I would refer to as an engineering data warehouse, all under one roof. And from my experience in the last 15 years, yes, there are other applications out there that allow you to do data capturing and do your engineering data warehouse in a different way. And then you've got document control solutions, which are separate, which those tools can allow you to hook into the documents in that way. What I've tried here to show really is something that is achievable by a company, by an oil and gas company or an engineering company, something that's achievable and maintainable moving forward. Because I have seen in the past where a project has a budget, they can then go and use an application which obviously is say expensive, and they have the resources as well to invest in that technology. They get the project up. Once it's handed over, all that information then needs to be carried on, and the operations have to run with that information that they've built up to keep it up to date, to maintain that information. And unfortunately, I've seen it and I've been there where it's not happened. It's just fallen down because the resources and the sort of the willpower, manpower is not there to kick on and continue with that asset. Digital asset, and the data integrity is then lost. And what I'm trying to say here is because you've got the documents, which is your sort of foundation in the system, you've got it already set for in an operations philosophy. You've got your projects there as well, so you know what's happened with those documents and what changes have happened. It allows you to, in the future, if there are any brownfield projects, it allows you to start with the documents. You have the confidence to know that that's the latest revision of that document. I know what's happened to it. I can see it within the same system, what's happened to it, what changes been through. And I've got the luxury of having that at my disposal, and I've got the data sitting there, and it's up to date, in that way. If it's not up to date in-house, I can rescrape deliverables and build up that data again if I need to, or if it's a new asset that comes along. So really, it just allows the oil and gas or engineering company to evolve and just keep adding assets into their engineering data warehouse and their library with I wouldn't say minimum fuss, but really as easy as can possibly be in-house, so they don't have to keep going out to external consultancy to scrape, to get their data up to scratch. They can all do it in-house, and it allows them to move forward and really focus on their assets, and allows the operations and the maintenance teams to really kick on with their projects, knowing that it's very easy for them to create a project in SAP or in Maximo, create a work pack, select all the deliverables that they feel require updating, changing. If a new pump or something is added, they highlight those, and then they can that allows the document controllers or the engineer or the projects team to check those deliverables out into a new project, work on that. Right? Once it's delivered, check it back in. And just bear in mind, the likes of, we're in conversation with the likes of Exxon, where they could have maybe 30, 40, 50 projects at the same time just going on continuously within there. So that really does give you the whole vast of what you see within the system, and really just it allows you to have the assurance that your asset integrity is not being compromised in any way. Right, that sort of kind of brings an end to my session there. Ben, if there's any questions, I'm available.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Akil. Really fascinating stuff. And the audience, based on the comments coming through, completely agree with me. So that's great. We've got a few questions.
Okay, that's great. That's great, because this would be a bit reassuring, because the way this is working, I'm talking and I don't know anyone who's there. So they're great. Kick ahead with the questions, mate.
Perfect. First question that's come in. How do you deal with concurrent changes to the same critical drawings?
Well, the way that, put it this way, there's no system out there that will do it for you, unfortunately. I used to have this philosophy that somewhere there's a system that'll just do it for you. What tends to happen is you allow each project to check out the deliverable, right? So that one deliverable could go to more than one project. You allow that to happen. However, you keep visibility of that. And what you need to do is you need to have the responsible engineers for both of those projects. They need to be in conversation continuously. They need to be in conversation, and then when it's time to check back in, you need a sort of a round table with the operations guys and the projects guys to make sure that when the document is checked in, both of those changes are sort of reflected on the deliverable when they're checked back in. It is, unfortunately, it will be I wouldn't say a manual, but it needs interaction between all three engineers and parties within there. I hope that covers it.
Perfect. We have another question coming in from Mark Johnson. How do you address the challenge of aligning disparate data sources with the master, i.e., tagging nomenclature in external data sources can consistently differ from the master tag register? Does establishing an EDW require a data cleanse exercise to allow these systems to connect?
Yeah, the hope is that I know what Mark means there, because me and Mark had the same issue when we worked together. Was Maximo was out of sync with the data management system, right? And there was a disparity within there. I think really what this system allows you to, and the way you would bring it in to a company, is you would first of all make sure your data scraping, your tagging, and your document references were all up to date, and then push that through to Maximo. And then that way, the EDW would be the master, and Maximo would be the sort of feeding off the information. So if anything changed from the document or the data within the EDW, it would be pushed back into Maximo, and vice versa. If something is updated in Maximo, then it should be highlighted within the data management and the EDW to be updated.
Perfect, thank you. And from a standards perspective, what standards would or could the environment you're talking about implement?
All the engineering companies, they tend to have their own standards. However, they have a class library. So we can, what we would do is we would set up the system to comply with their class library and their standards that they have set. However, I do know that operators, I'm not sure in the North Sea, because I've not really heard it much in the North Sea, but it is happening. There's something called SIFOS, SFIHOS, which is operators getting together and trying to standardize this sort of procedure. They're starting to standardize a standard for the class libraries, so that everyone, so handover, EPCs and operators are all talking the same language.
And how do you see the on-prem versus cloud deployment of environments?
What I'm seeing, and I've seen in the last, especially now with COVID, I think this is kind of accelerating. It's a bit like COVID's accelerating the electric car market. I think in the same way, COVID is accelerating the movement from on-prem to cloud, because a lot of the oil and gas, as we've seen, a lot more working from home, working virtually, and the oil and gas companies, they're looking to move away from having support staff looking after physical servers or having to look after physical servers. So it really is, everything is now moving to cloud-based. And again, OpenText is doing their bit where they're moving all their on-prem applications to cloud editions now. They're calling it cloud editions, and that's a factor that's really, you know. And again, the COVID and all these, the way that the oil and gas operators are looking for in the future, it really is going to cloud. As we see, yes, we may lose a few functionality, but I think from the understanding I'm getting, operators and engineering companies are willing to sacrifice a few sort of functionality, sort of nice to haves, as long as they can be in the cloud. And it just makes that the upgrade and upgrading to a new application or a new version of application so much easier. Because Mark will tell you, and others will tell you, we've been in scenarios where, because there's been so much customization, and moving to the new version of it is sort of, you know, it's almost impossible. So less customizations happening, more cloud-based SaaS service. That's what's really happening and moving forward at a fast pace.
Perfect. And just a final comment. I mean, your own background personally is in IT and in oil and gas.
Yes.
What do you think the future holds? I mean, in terms of cloud adoption as a sector, what do you think is the future?
Definitely. If I was the IM person within an organization, that's what I would be looking for straight away. Adoption of cloud, move it to the cloud, make it available for everyone, and yes, you know, really look at what is achievable. And that's really what this whole philosophy that I was talking about is. Just go with what's achievable. Yes, you can go big and you can sort of start gathering millions and millions of data and attributes and all these kind of stuff. But you've got to remember, you've got to keep them up to date, and you've got to, you've got to make sure you got to have the manpower and the budget to continue with these. So you really need to look at yourself, have this sort of, you know, look in the mirror and say, look, are we a projects based, or should we really be looking at more operations based? Make that change first. You know, it's a gradual change, but you really make that change first, and then really start looking at how can the technology help the engineers when they really need and they're called upon to look at deliverables or documents, to have the confidence to know that the asset, the data, the documents, the asset has not been compromised, and I've got the assurance that I can now go ahead and start a new project with that ability.
Akhil, thank you so much for your presentation today. For anyone in our audience that's keen to chat with Akhil and the OpenText team, a reminder that you can do so in the virtual exhibition hall all day. Akhil obviously had his contact details there as well for direct contact with himself. Again, there's a giveaway going on in your booth as well, Akhil. I believe a free coffee voucher for anyone that wants to come and have a chat with you.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not fully aware of that, but yeah, good luck with having a coffee.
You can go and grab a free coffee yourself, then that's fine.
Yeah,
explore it as well.
Exactly.
Perfect. And for anyone that did, come in halfway through the presentation, a reminder that all of our presentations will be on demand for 7 days on this platform post-event, and will also be uploaded to our YouTube channel. But Akhil, for now, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you soon.
Thanks, mate. Cheers. Bye.
Thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us. Session 2 here at Digital Energy Summit 2021. I am delighted to say that up next we have two individuals that need little introduction. I will do it anyway for you. We have Bob Keeler, former CEO of Wood Group and consultant at AB15, and Derek Thompson, seasoned business advisor and mentor, with their presentation, Be More Effective Online. Gentlemen, welcome to you both this morning.
Hi. Good morning. How are you doing?
Very, very well, thank you. I shall hand the reins straight over to you. And again, a reminder for the audience, if there are any questions throughout the presentation, you can use the chat facility at the right-hand side of your screen. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you. Okay, so let's start. I'm Bob. I'll be leading today's masterclass.
And I'm Derek, and I'm supporting Bob.
Okay, so listen, communicating online, we all know it's tough. People who don't know you want to know that you know what you're doing, what you're good at your job. They also want to feel what it'd be like to work with you. Would they get along with you? Would they care about your problems? Do you care about their problems? Could they trust you? And quite frankly, you can't get trust by somebody by asking your customers to stare at a slide deck. So over the next sort of 20 minutes or so, we will cover 8 tips for face-to-face online communication, whether it's Teams calls, Zoom meetings, WebEx events, whatever it is. We'll talk about content and delivery. We'll talk about preparation and persuasion. We'll talk about what it takes to make your customers believe in you and trust you. And the first tip is about timing. Now, we all get tired of online meetings. There's nothing worse than a day of back-to-back team meetings or Zoom calls. So our first tip is really simple. Keep any presentations that you've got to do as short as you can. See, the thing is, when we present in person, we can use our energy levels and our eye contact to hold people's attention. Online, it's easy for people to lose focus and sort of half listen as they do other things, read emails, browse their news feeds or whatever. And I expect some of you may have done this. I've done it myself, I know. So how do we avoid this? We need to keep it lively and energetic. We need to make whatever we're saying useful. We need to make it interesting by varying things. But more than anything, keep it short. So that's tip number 1.
Yeah, tip number 1. There it is. Keep it short.
Exactly. The next tip is about clarity. When we're in a room with someone, a lot of our communication is non-verbal. People listen to what we say, but they pick up on our tone, our body language, how we interact with everyone in the room. A lot of this is reduced online, which means we need to make our presentations even clearer than we normally would. And our advice is simple. Make it accessible by using simple language. Avoid too many acronyms because sound quality can make acronyms harder to hear online. Make it brief. Keep the content brief to allow more time for interaction. And make it clear. Present in a simple, logical way. So accessible, brief and clear, ABC. The biggest threat that we have, I think, is called the curse of knowledge. We know a lot about a subject and we forget that the audience might not. If we use terms that people don't understand, it makes them feel awkward, potentially embarrassed, especially if no one else is asking for clarification, because people think, is it only me that doesn't understand this? So make sure that you have someone outside your team in rehearsals. Oh, rehearsals. Yep, rehearsals. So you can spot the potential clarity traps. So that's tip number 2.
And there it is. Make it clear.
Okay. The third tip is really about building rapport. In a normal presentation, we get the chance to build rapport before and after the presentation. You know, we meet somebody in reception, we go up to their office, we get to chat to them. Online, we often don't get this. So instead of trying to build rapport around the presentation, we need to build empathy and rapport inside our presentations. The best way to do this is to use business stories with the right ingredients and the right recipe to ensure your audience is engaged. Now for us, there are 5 ingredients and 5 parts to the recipe. A simple structure that works is to make sure that any story that you're going to tell in a business presentation has a setting, clear setting, followed by something happening, a turning point, a phase of overcoming struggle, ended by a clear resolution, leading to a takeaway message or implication. It's actually the classic person in a whole plot that's behind most of the successful films and books and TV series. There's an easy way to remember this. Setting, turning point, overcoming struggle, resolution, implication. STORI, story.
And Bob, you said there were other parts to the recipe, 5 parts?
Yep, 5 parts to the recipe as well. First thing is make me believe the story has to be true. Make it true. Then make me care about the story. Get me intrigued at the start of the story. Add some drama and then surprise me with something I wasn't expecting so that I remember the story. Now that sounds a lot of things to remember, but in practice, it becomes second nature when we use it. We make the customer the hero of the story. They're facing a difficult challenge that they've got to overcome. We come in as the advisor, we help them overcome their problem, and there's always a pleasant, unexpected outcome. Now, we tend to empathize with underdogs or people facing difficult challenges. We also emphasize with people who have motives that we can relate to, and we empathize more with characters, quite frankly, who are flawed, imperfect, or vulnerable. So talking about your mistakes and your challenges you've made can actually help to build empathy. Conversely, If you go in front of a customer and keep telling them how good you are and how many awards you've won, actually can push people away.
So I'm now going to show you a little story, a 1-minute story. Just watch this.
Raise your hand if you've ever had technical difficulties in a meeting. I know I certainly have. Around about 6 months ago, I was pitching a campaign idea to the sales team. We had created some great assets, including a fantastic mood film. We were doing a presentation, about to show the film, and then nothing. We pressed play multiple times and nothing happened. We froze and thought, oh my God, how are we going to get this idea across? The videographer then decided to press play on an audio track that we had used in the film. And I started to describe what would be going on in the film if you could see it. After I'd finished describing, I paused and thought, they're never going to understand this idea. And actually, the sales team were really receptive and said, wow, they could see our idea in their head. And they signed the concept off there and then. It made me realize that we shouldn't have an over-reliance on technology to get our ideas across. And if we can't explain our ideas verbally, then they're not clear enough.
She uses the structure we've just explained. One picture and some background music to get her message across. That's all.
Yeah. Now, some people may be confused about what stories we can use in a business context, because we're not talking about fairy tales here. They need to be relevant to the point you're trying to make. There are two broad categories, I think, anyway. Stories about previous business experiences and analogous stories that relate to the concept or the message you're trying to convey. I might take a story from science, sport, nature, history, or wider society to illustrate a key point, but I can still tell it in the form of a story because stories connect with people. And that's tip number 3.
There it is. Use stories, build rapport by using relevant, true business stories in your presentation.
Exactly. Tip 4 is about preparation. Now, many people prepare for an important presentation using a 2-stage process. We call it wing and fling. They fling a few slides together and they wing it. Now, you can sometimes get away with that in person, but presenting online is a bit of a different. You see, when we're in a meeting room, we can relax into a presentation. We can see the audience's response. We can pick up on subtle clues. If someone's looking confused, we can easily stop and ask them what's troubling them. In short, we can feed off the energy in the room to deliver a reasonable presentation. But online, as Akil just mentioned in the previous presentation, we lose most of that. We can't see your faces. So we need to be super prepared and know exactly what we intend to say, who's going to say what videos we're going to show, what pictures we're going to show, what slides we're going to show, how we're going to answer any questions. We've got to do our homework, plan ahead, preempt the potential questions, and have those questions thought in advance. When we were presenting, we need to think of it as a conversation. But unlike a normal conversation when we're online, we don't get the same feedback cues we do in person. So it can feel really awkward. That's why practice and rehearsal is even more important. There's one thing, however, if you don't prepare well enough and you do a really poor presentation, you probably never know because nobody's going to tell you. Most people are too polite to tell you that the presentation really wasn't that thought-provoking after all, and that they lost interest and started on their Grindr account 5 minutes into your presentation. Presenting to a webcam can be quite nerve-wracking, especially if you're presenting in a second language. There are 3 primary dangers, I suppose. Firstly, you might forget what you're going to say. So cheat. Have your notes or a storyboard just off camera. You might talk for too long, so time your practice sessions. And you might lose people's interest. So crank up the energy level and show that you care about the subject matter. Because if you don't care, quite frankly, why should the audience? So that's tip number 4.
Tip number 4 is about being better prepared than ever. Prepare more.
Exactly. So let's move on to tip number 5. Making sure that the content of your presentation is right for your audience. If you're presenting your idea or product to an audience, it's not about what you want to present. It's about what your audience needs to hear. Imagine if you're doing a presentation to get the audience to accept and adopt your ideas. You're trying to persuade them to support you. And the psychology of persuasion means that we need to achieve some simple things to be persuasive. What we found is that the audience has 6 primary questions that you need to answer. These are the obvious above the line questions. They also have a further 6 secondary questions that are probably below the line and they're trying to answer themselves, and they relate to the context of what you're saying with respect to other choices that they may have. And our recommendation is that everything in your presentation be focused on these questions. If there's anything else in there, then it's not really serving a purpose and you could take it out.
So we've been going now for just over 10-15 minutes. So let me show you the second full screen slide of our presentation. This is called the perfect pitch. So let's go through the 6 primary questions that your pitch should be addressing. The first question is, there we go. The first question is, why should we pay attention? Make me interested. Make me curious to know more. The next question is, what's in it for us? What are the benefits, ideally specific, substantial, scalable, and sustainable? Then I want to know, how is the benefit produced? Tell me how your product or service works. You don't need to give away any trade secrets, but at least explain the basics so I understand exactly what it is that you do. Then, what makes you the expert? What gives you credibility in this field? I don't need your CV or your life history, but I need to know what you know that you're talking about. And then, why should I believe you? What evidence can you provide to support the claimed benefits? Again, give me some proof. And the final primary question is, what do you want? Specifically, what do you want next? Do you want me to buy something, to do a free trial, to have a follow-up meeting? You need to tell me. These are the above the line questions. Note that they don't include any need to tell me the history of your organization, where your offices are, or what sectoral awards your company has won. So let's move on to the secondary questions. The secondary questions are below the line, but just as important. The first question an audience will ask is obvious. Is this our best option? The audience may be evaluating you against your competitors or doing nothing. Never tell them that they have no choice. People hate being pushed into a decision and are more likely to say no, even if it's in their interest to say yes. And all the time, they'll be asking themselves, could we work with these people? We don't need to be friends, but we need to have mutual respect at least. Then we move on to a couple of practicalities. Will it take a lot of effort to try what you're offering? If I need to jump through hoops to try out your product or service, then I probably won't. Then, will it be risky? If it doesn't work as you say it should, or worse still, it fails, what financial, operational, and reputational risks would it create for my organization and, of course, me personally? And then, do you understand what's special about your option? How are you different and better than your competitors? And the final question relates to what Seth Godin calls their world view. Does your proposal fit with us? If you're trying to sell an Oracle add-on to a company that uses SAP, you might be wasting your time. So if you can answer most of the primary questions and influence a few of the secondary questions, then your pitch is more likely to be successful.
Excellent. Now, if you're interested in the underlying psychology of persuasion that drives these questions, there are various books available on persuasion, methods of persuasion, but one we found as a decent reference is this one, which is Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion by Robert B. Cialdini. And that's really where some of these questions come from. So it's a good starting point if you're interested in this. And that's tip number 5, really. So make sure that you press the right persuasive buttons by having the right structure and the right content in your presentation. Okay, so tip 6 is about the set of slides you can use to support your presentation, the slide deck, if you will. We said before that we want people to trust us. Now, they might struggle if they don't get a chance to hear us and see us. So during planning and rehearsals, keep asking yourself, why am I showing this specific slide? What will the audience learn from the slide that they may not understand if I simply tell them the information? Each slide has to enhance the presentation, have to be necessary. Every unnecessary slide detracts from your presentation. Only show a slide for as long as you need to. Go back to human beings and faces between the slides. Every slide fills the screen is a second less that the client or the person on the other end gets to know you. Now, if you challenge the reasons for showing every slide, then the ones you're going to be left with are the ones that you simply have to show. Here's a second point, however. If you've got a slide that contains text, minimize the amount of text on the slide. It's a simple test. If you put up a slide during rehearsals, then time someone as they read every bit of text on that slide out loud, and assume that as you present, they're not listening whilst they're reading. You might question this. Surely you're thinking, well, people can read and listen. Well, I'm afraid you're wrong. It's called the split attention effect. It's been proven in studies, specifically the work of Professor John Sweller, the University of New South Wales, recognised expert in the theories of cognitive loading. The text on the slide will be read, which soaks up time and attention and diverts attention away from your message. So use less text on the slide. Here's another thing. Stick to one concept per slides. We get hung up on the number of slides, which is not as relevant. Try and make sure each slide is actually containing one concept. Think about it like the evening news. If they put a slide up, they don't put up 4 different graphs on a slide. They put up one concept at a time. Another thing is make sure, we shouldn't really have to say this, but we still see it all the time. Make sure there's nothing unreadable or out of focus on your slide. No tiny text, no blurred graphics. Now, people that I deal with often think I'm against slides, which is not true. It's just not true. Slides can be a great enhancement to a presentation, but they can make the best teams look very ordinary if they're overdone or done wrong. So that's tip number 6.
Yeah, tip 6 is spend more time taking the things out of your deck than putting them in.
Absolutely. Right. Tip 7 is a simple one. It's about teamwork during a presentation. When we present in person, we naturally react to people's expressions and body language. It's much more difficult to spot these clues online, especially like today when we can't see people. But normally, if you're on a Zoom call or a team call, if you're presenting, get a colleague to watch the audience and spot any signs of approval or confusion. That colleague can then interrupt you and interrupt the presenter if they need to.
So when we do it, I also chip in if Bob has forgotten a key point, which he often does. And if something goes wrong, you can be each other's backup. So that's a very simple tip. Use teamwork.
Exactly. So for instance, last night, Derek had all sorts of issues about power supply at his house, and we're thinking, well, what's the backup? The worst that can go wrong is halfway through this presentation, he disappears and I have to carry on with the rest myself. If there's more than one of you involved in the presentation, you've got that level of security and you don't let your audience and your customer down. Which takes us, I suppose, to the final point that we're going to talk about today. Use the technology well.
So should you use a virtual background? Well, generally no. Fake backgrounds are clunky and distracting. If you have a proper green screen, that's different.
Right, people know nowadays that we work from home, many of us. We don't need to pretend that we're not. Having a virtual background makes it look as though we're hiding something. Look, if the cat walks in, it makes us more human. If people could see your bookshelf or your TV or your kids' artwork on the fridge behind you, it just makes you come across as an ordinary person, just like the people in your audience. But do think a little bit about your setup in your home or your office. Make sure that you've got a decent webcam, you've got a decent microphone, and if they're poor quality, spend a little bit of money because it can make a big difference.
So don't sit with your back to the window like someone on the witness protection program. Use the lights that you've got available or buy a couple of LED fill lights or 2 so that people can see you clearly. And try and get the webcam up at eye level while you present. Staring down at a laptop screen is no good.
Okay, so let's talk a wee bit about graphics. The term lower thirds is the term from the TV industry about text and graphic that appears across the bottom portion of the screen. It's the breaking news headlines. It's the banner on Sky News.
Yeah, there it is. I've been using it already, and it looks like this. So that's... Sorry, Bob, on you go.
Yeah, no, I mean, copying this approach can look more professional than having random text appearing on the screen. It also allows for a consistent and competent feel, and it also means that we don't hide people's faces when we're talking. It's also a good way of getting, if you've got any corporate branding that you need to get in there, you can put it in the lower thirds, and yeah, it works pretty well.
It's very easy to do, but that brings us to one of the elephants in the room. Should we use special effects?
Well, you can see that just because you can, I guess it doesn't mean that you should. Yeah.
So we can use multiple cameras, overlays, and virtual backgrounds to add all sorts of static and moving images. Our advice is simple: mostly don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're going to be doing a lot of presenting from home, then the ability to seamlessly change sources, your camera angles and your other presentations, is good to do. The ability to bring up graphics by pressing a button rather than from software, it makes it simpler and less likely to go wrong in the middle of an important presentation. It may be worth investing in some visual mixing hardware like this. If I show you my little camera here, and now I can spin around to show you what I've got here. I've got a vision mixer, I've got the camera on an auto cue, and I've got all the control panel here. That's why I've been looking about a bit.
Yeah. So, I mean, normally Derek and I would be sitting next to each other in the same office, and Derek would control the cameras and I would concentrate on the presentation. But at the moment, because of COVID restrictions, we're both presenting from home. So that means that if I've got to use graphics, I've got to use software, and Derek can use the hardware to do it more simply. But the hardware is actually less error prone. Now, remember, as well as that, we can still use pictures, video clips, props, and stories to make the presentation more engaging, as you would in a face-to-face presentation. And really, I suppose, Derek, that's the 8th tip in a nutshell, really.
It is indeed. Use the technology to your advantage.
So that's our 8 key tips for presenting online. So how do we summarize all of that?
Well, presenting online is likely to be here to stay.
Yeah. To present effectively online, don't blank your screen out.
To present effectively online, we need to have a professional delivery, natural and conversational. We need to answer the audience's primary and secondary questions, and we need to be better prepared than we would be for a face-to-face presentation. We should use stories to engage, build empathy, and create rapport. So make it simple, make it short, make it useful, and make it interesting. And if you do all of that, you'll be making it effective. Thank you. And I don't know where Bob's gone, but he seems to have disappeared into the black beyond. There he is.
Okay.
So some of you may have you're back. Some of you may have questions on this, and if you do, you can feel free to drop us an email afterwards, or we can take some questions now, undoubtedly. And I'll just flash up our email addresses. So there we go. You can contact us at bob@eb15.org or derek@eb15.org.
Thank you very much. Some fascinating stuff there, and it's inevitably now my job to take this advice and pass it on to the team here. So it's now making me feel very bad about our our presentations throughout the day. It'd be great to hear from you guys from an AB15 perspective, maybe just to give the audience a little bit more information about your guys, day-to-day roles now, and just what kind of support you offer to professionals out there.
Yeah, I mean, we work in the spirit of helping others. So most of what we do is unpaid. We help a lot of early stage entrepreneurs, a lot of charities, lots of social enterprises. And we have a kind of Robin Hood model. When we do work for big companies, we charge like a wounded rhino. And we use those fees to fund all the work that we do pro bono for others and support them. We support people to grow. We help them in terms of communication, strategy, leadership, whatever it takes to help them to grow their organization, to grow their business, and to be successful. And all we ask is that if we help them, at some point in the future, when they've got the capacity and they've got the capability, they pass that on, they pay that forward by helping others.
Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And would always encourage individuals to come and speak to yourself. There's a couple of questions that have come in. First one being, and probably going back to the video, the short 1 minute video that we had. If you start to get into trouble, are there any tips to regaining people's attention? Is it better to press on as planned, or to switch things up?
Yeah, the best thing is to find that out during rehearsals, Ben. And most people don't do rehearsals. But what we find is that there's this imaginary line that we call the iPhone line, which is where the iPhone becomes more interesting than you. and we need to keep people above the iPhone line. And the way we do that is by keeping things short and having variety. So today, for instance, we had a couple of slides, we had a video, we had a jumping elephant, we had a couple of stories, and we tried to keep in that space things, keep it moving, keep it varied, so that we're not asking people to immerse themselves. We've got short attention spans nowadays. So if anything's more than 2 or 3 minutes, we should assume that people will begin to lose interest. So at the end of that time, you've got to do something different. Tell a story, bring people's attention back. What would you say, Derek, from the TV side of things?
Yeah, well, having spent 30 years working in broadcasting, you take your cues from a TV program. Basically, nothing is on screen longer than it ever needs to be. It's only there and off and on again just to keep your interest, pique your interest. Because if you have stuff there all the time, then the audience get extremely bored. So every 30-minute TV program that's out there, every frame of that TV program is absolutely scripted to its back teeth and rehearsed to its back teeth so that nothing is wasted at all.
Yeah, and when you think about it nowadays, when we're presenting through this window, we're effectively doing our own little form of broadcasting. So we need to think more in these terms than ever before.
Perfect. Well, I think that's all the questions that we have so far. So, gentlemen, thank you so much. It'd be great just obviously to remind the audience that the presentation is on demand post-event for 7 days here on the platform and also on YouTube. Bob, you mentioned a couple of books during the presentation. Could you quickly recap them for us, just in case anyone wanted to take any notes in?
Honestly, I would go into YouTube and read this and watch the summary video rather than read the book. It's quite a dry book, but it goes through the psychology of persuasion, what makes us say yes to things and what makes us say no to things. There's 6 main things. Let me give you an example of one, for instance. As human beings, we tend to value things that are more difficult to get. So if somebody tells you this is a limited edition, the price goes up, which is bizarre, really, because at the end of the day, we might never have wanted the thing in the first place. So when we're presenting, if we can make sure that people understand what's different or special about what we're saying compared to the competition, then it immediately becomes more valuable if people think it's special, more unique, or rarer.
Superb.
Okay,
gentlemen, thank you so much for your time.
Good.
Absolute privilege having you here, and we will see you soon.
Good luck.
Pleasure. Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Fantastic talk there, folks. And again, a reminder, all of the content will be on demand post-event for your viewing pleasure. I am delighted to say that our final presentation of session 2 comes from Martin Humphrey, Enterprise Systems Engineer at Zerto. Delighted to have Zerto back with us this year. Last year we heard from them in partnership with Fugro and Stena Drilling. Martin's presentation is entitled Leader in... I will try that again, sorry. Martin's title is Move Your Data Anywhere in Minutes. Zerto, a leader in disaster recovery, backup and cloud mobility. Martin, thank you for joining us today. I will hand the reins straight over to you, sir.
Perfect, thanks very much. And obviously, thanks for all the tips. And as you can see, I'm presenting in front of a window, which will obviously change the next time I do a presentation. So 2 seconds, let me just share my screen. So thanks very much and good afternoon. My name is Martin Humphrey. As Ben mentioned, I am an Enterprise Systems Engineer with Zerto, and I'd like to take the next 30 minutes to talk to you about workload mobility and how Zerto differs from many other solutions you may be using or looking at today. So what we'll cover here in the next 30 minutes is a kind of high-level overview of the Zerto platform, the use cases for moving your applications, and explore different migration strategies and solutions. We'll cover the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we've got a kind of pre-recorded demo so you can see it in action. So the Zerto platform, so hopefully everybody has heard of Zerto before. We have many customers in the oil and gas sector, and we are serial offenders, as Ben mentioned at the Digital Energy Summit. So the Zerto platform is built with continuous data protection at its core. This means that our replication is always on. We are completely agentless. We are storage agnostic, and we replicate at the block level on the hypervisor. We use application consistency groupings called virtual protection groups, which we'll go over later on in the slides. And we use our powerful journaling technology, which gives us granularity of seconds for multiple VM applications down to the file level for up to 30 days. And we have built a backup right into the protection workflows with multiple repository options available, including on-premises and in the cloud. We have orchestration and automation built into the platform. You can perform failover lives, failover tests, and move operations in as little as 4 clicks. You can configure one-to-many replication for multi or hybrid cloud strategies for recovery or migration. You can test non-destructively and often to build confidence in your recovery strategy to ensure your migrations will be a success. And what we've not built automation and orchestration into the platform, you can use our RESTful APIs for complete automation and control. And talking about control, we have analytics and control. This gives you complete visibility into your entire protection and recovery strategy. This aggregates all of your sites to give you a holistic view of all of your protection that has been covered by Zerto. We have a central UI for reporting on resources, and we have Planner, which can help you plan your recovery resources so there's no more guessing or creating spreadsheets for the calculations on what you require for migrations or disaster recovery. And we also have centralized alerting in our analytics platform. So Zerto has numerous use cases such as disaster recovery, workload mobility, backup and data reuse, but today we're going to focus on mobility and migration. So let's look at why you perform a migration, and unlike disaster recovery, these migrations are generally planned. First and the most common that we see is infrastructure refresh or modernization. We can also do migration between 2 or more on-premises or planned downtime events such as power upgrades, or simply just moving services where they're best suited to your end users or clients. Data center consolidation is something that we're regularly seeing with customers looking to consolidate data centers to reduce operational costs or consolidate after a merger or acquisition. We have public cloud migration as well. This is more popular, whether it's bursting your applications to alleviate performance issues on your on-premises environment due to the demand of working from home, or people adopting a cloud-first strategy. We're seeing a growing use case of migration between clouds where customers see moving between different cloud providers to reduce cost or to utilize different services in another cloud provider. Companies are looking at co-location services and managed service providers to host their infrastructure, and workloads looking to move away from hosting data centers themselves, but either don't have the skills or they're worried about data sovereignty or security in the public cloud. And we've also got disaster avoidance. And we've got a great example of this later on, but if you think of what's been in the news kind of recently, was there a data center going on fire? If you were in one of the surviving data centers and you were advised to invoke your disaster recovery strategy, you could have easily moved out of that data center if you had the technology in place to do so. Now, let's look at some of the different migration strategies. So we've got Big Bang. So this involves completely moving the entire data in one transfer, in one operation. Because of this, there is no test period and no guarantee it will work. Therefore, it's a relatively high risk, especially at scale. There is no need, there's no parallel systems required to accomplish this migration strategy, reducing complexity, and it can be less expensive than other methods. However, what happens when you run into problems or the migration fails the first time? Failure can also lead to long periods of downtime, frustrate users or customers, and likely it will need for you to start the migration over again. Secondly, we have the phased approach. So this strategy involves migrating chunks or phases, which means it can be lengthy in planning and complex to prepare, as you need to account for all dependencies, and dependencies are important. This method can also be costly because you end up extending your migration due to this approach, which can be per system, per dependency, or per application. The phased migration also offers less risk than the Big Bang because it's not all at once. but due to it being a drawn-out process, costs can be much higher than the Big Bang migration. If there is a failure during the phase migration, that failure is likely related directly to the workloads migrated or a missing dependency, so there's less of a surface area to troubleshoot. But remember, planning and dependency mappings is crucial. So the parallel approach, this requires having two of everything being migrated. So the systems and the source and the recovery site can be synced. This is far less risky than the Big Bang approach and allows you to focus on migrating system by system, but is often costly as you need to have two environments running for potentially a long period of time. Now let's look at some of the different solutions. So you have lift and shift. This can be coined as kind of legacy or traditional approach. However, it can still be used today for systems that are non-critical or where time is not of the essence. There's also still services available to perform infrastructure relocation to a new data center. Additionally, if you want to move to cloud, providers also offer solutions to physically transport large amounts of data. A good example of this is Amazon Snowball. Storage snapshots can be used, leveraged at the LUN level via snapshots and asynchronous replication. This typically requires a like-for-like storage array or vendor-specific arrays on each site. This can be costly, especially if you intend to switch storage vendors or refresh to the latest and greatest technology. That said, this can allow for isolated testing and additional migration planning or scheduling based on those results. The result is this solution may not only be costly, but also lengthy, as there is often no orchestration involved. This means manual work needs to be performed for the configuration, testing, and production cutover. Not to mention, there may also be a significant downtime if it's using asynchronous replication. Backups are another method to move large amounts of data. However, it's similar to lift and shift. It may require pre-building of systems for bare metal restores, unless VMs can be restored along with all of its dependencies. This process is typically manual with no orchestration and with data loss as high as 24 hours. Reversing a failed problematic migration using backups may also be costly, include a large amount of overhead and resources, and there could be fines in place for the amount of downtime as well. So at Zerto, we use a kind of phased approach. So we've kind of got a hybrid approach between some of the different solutions. We require customers to have a pre-built virtual environment in place as we're software only. Using Zerto is simple, is always on, and it allows you to simply schedule your application migration when it suits you. Zerto supports on-premises hypervisors, various cloud native and VMware as a service platforms, and we are storage and compute agnostic. So the headaches of making everything a match for one-to-one is very limited. Virtual protection groups allow for consistency among all VMs that make up a protection group. So you know when they're migrated, all systems will be consistent down to the second, which we will cover in the next slide. And we've got two types of testing capabilities. We have our non-destructive failover test in an isolated network, or a pre-commit validation during an actual move process. And we'll show you this as part of the demo. You can also perform a failover test prior to the move and have two layers of testing before committing the workloads to a new site. Zerto Analytics also allows you to plan for capacity when you're building out the target data center or planning your cloud consumption strategy, enabling greater visibility and prediction of costs. When we're talking about migrations, Zerto performs zero data loss migrations with one-click rollback, which is all automated and orchestrated. Once you've validated and committed the workload, Zerto also allows you to rapidly reverse protect and use the original data set as a seeded data on the original site. It also gives you an escape plan and never locking you in. So to solve the challenge of moving or recovering complex enterprise applications, you need to protect your applications as a cohesive logical entity. That way, you involve the inconsistent recoveries of multiple VM applications where each VM is being restored or moved to a different point in time. This allows you to migrate, protect, and recover complex multiple VM applications together as one unit at the exact same point in time. This saves a ton of resources when you're trying to reduce the amount of time dedicated to recovery. And these disk application and consistency groupings, when we create a virtual protection group, is really important here. So we support multi-VM disk consistency, we support write order fidelity, we honour boot ordering on particular platforms, we can re-IP your virtual machines when you're migrating them to another platform, and we have the rollback capability, being able to orchestrate a rollback and a failback from the platform if there was a problem with the migration. Now we've discussed the different types of migration strategies and some of the solutions out there. Let's see it in action. While we're going through the demo, we can see how the Zerto platform makes workload migration very simple and removes a lot of the guesswork and manual intervention to be successful. But before I kick off the demo, I thought it'd be useful to show you the migration approach and what we're automating and orchestrating behind the scenes. So first we do an initial sync, so we are replicating all of the data from the source site to the target site. We then create a continuous data protection replication. And the importance of this is this places the migration back in your hands, so you can choose when it's best to perform that migration. When the move VPG process is initiated, the source VMs are shut down and a checkpoint is inserted into the journal. And this is important because when we then recover to this checkpoint at the target site, it means there's zero data loss. And the best part of this process just takes minutes, so there's no large data move needed. And as we mentioned before, Zerto is hardware agnostic. We support multiple hypervisors, and we have cloud support to further enhance this. And the best part as well, we can test this multiple times to ensure that you've got the peace of mind and you know that your migration is going to be a success. So let's kick off the demo. So what you can see here is I have the Zerto dashboard up. We've got 8 VPGs, 40 VMs, and our continuous data protection is happening behind the scenes, which is given as an RPO of 5 seconds. I have 2 cloud sites set up for the target sites, which is AWS and Azure. So today I'm going to be showing you migrating 40 virtual machines into Azure. And the importance here of the virtual protection group is we actually predefine all the recovery settings in the virtual protection group. So when we're failing over to Azure, you can see that our failover, move, VNet, and subnet is actually what's already populated in Azure. We are telling the VMs in Azure how to spin up the virtual machines and what to spin them up as, and we're also selecting the security group as well. And you can see here, you can also check when the last time this was tested, so you can ensure that you've got an up-to-date test before you actually perform the migration itself. So what you'll now see is I'll go down to the move operation down at the bottom left, and we'll actually start to perform the migration. And as I mentioned, we're going to be migrating to Azure, so I'm going to select my 4 Azure VPGs to do the migration. And here are the different options I can choose for doing the migration. I can choose to reverse protect the VM, so replicating back from Azure to the original location. I can choose to force shut down the VMs. I can choose to keep the source VMs as well. And what I'm going to now do is start move. And you can see there's very little options available there due to the fact that we're already pre-populating all the recovery steps. So as we're agentless and we use everything via the API, I'm going to show you what's going to be happening in the vCenter, as it's a VMware site that we're going to be migrating into Azure Native. So you can see here that we are now shutting down the virtual machines, and we've got a few errors here. So we'll double check to see why these VMs are not shutting down or if they actually have shut down. And you can see that we're just working through the process of shutting down all of the virtual machines. And I have sped this up just so you're not sitting watching the loading bars for the next 5-10 minutes. So what I'm going to do is just double check that the VPGs are moving and we haven't received any errors for the virtual machines which weren't able to shut down. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to double check to see whether the VMs have shut down properly. So it was VM6 and VM26. So I can see, yep, those VMs are shut down. So there's no remediation action required to shut them down and start the migration again. I'm just going to go back into tasks. And what I can see is one VPG has already shut down all the VMs and we're starting to take the checkpoints. So what we're doing is we're taking that last checkpoint to ensure that all the data that was on these VMs are being copied across to the target location. So yep, all 4 VPGs have finished. We've shut down all of VMs on vCenter. The only 2 remaining ones are our virtual replication appliances, and we are now replicating and spinning up the VMs into Azure. So just to show you, we've got no VMs running apart from my Zerto Cloud appliance, which is running in Azure, but all of the VMs are, they're not already pre-running into in Azure. The disks are stored in blob storage, and what we're doing is we're basically doing a promotion of the VMs from the blob storage into the managed disks. So you can see here we are looking just at the progress bar, so we can see that we've got a move before commit, which is steadily rising. And as we scale and we're using cloud native tools in the cloud, what we'll show you as well is we use our VM skill sets. So you can see our VM skill sets, we're scaling up to 41 workers, and we store all the IO generated as part of the migration or failover into Azure message queues. So you can see here that I'm impatiently clicking the buttons just to make sure that the VMs are loading. And there's a VM there running since it's a success. So what I'm just going to try and do is I'm going to try and ping it just to make sure that the VM is actually going to respond to a ping. So you can see here that it's not quite up and running yet, but it will respond to a ping in a couple of seconds. There we go. So that VM is now up and running. And I'm just going to do a refresh. And I'm also using the PowerShell bar at the bottom. So I'm using the Cloud Shell just to, as it gives you more visibility on what's being created and what's running. So perfect, more and more VMs are starting to run, and I'll just go and check. So we are coming to the later parts of the failover commit, of the commit. So we are running the VMs in Azure, so you can see that most of the VMs, I think all the VMs have been created, and we're just waiting on a few booting up. So if we do a refresh, we've still got a few creating. There we go, the majority of them are running now. There's one creating there, so wait for that to be created, and what we'll then do is we'll have a quick look at the Zerto interface just to show you the option to be able to automatically roll back in the event of a problem with the migration. Perfect, so that is all of the virtual machines up and running. And what I'm going to do is just going to ping another virtual machine, which is in another virtual protection group, just to make sure that's up and running so I can see it is. So we're just waiting on Zerto completing the validation checks, and then the move operation should be complete. Yep, all the virtual machines are up and running, and there you go. You can see that the move operation is now being complete, and where we've got this backwards arrow here, if I expanded this column out, you'll see this is the rollback option. So we've got the capability now to go in and check the virtual machines are up and running and that the services and applications have started correctly on them. If they haven't, we've got the capability to roll back. But in this instance, we can see that we're able to ping a few and we're happy with that at the moment. So I'm going to apply just to show you, we can pull recovery reports as well from the Zerto console, so we can show you every step that we've performed as part of the migration. But if you've ever done a migration to Azure before, you'll see that being able to perform this in about 17.5 minutes is actually very good. So what about other platforms? So, how fast was your last migration? We've done a migration into Azure, and because we're using cloud scaling technologies, so we're elastically scaling our workers to meet the demand, which is not only efficient, but it's saving in cost as well. So we've got the Azure, which was about 17.5 minutes to fail over 40 VMs or to migrate 40 VMs. And we've got AWS as well. So AWS took a wee bit longer, and it was about 25.5 minutes to fail over or migrate 40 VMs into AWS and change our VMs as EC2 instance. But we're best known for our performance in leading RTOs for VMware as well. So you can see doing the same move operation into VMware. The RTO was 2.5 minutes for that virtual protection group, 4.5 minutes for our second virtual protection group, 6 minutes and 14 seconds for our third one, and 3 minutes and 11 seconds. Now, I'm doing this in an SE lab, which has not got the best resources available to it. So in a production environment where you're built to run production workloads, you'll see your RTOs being probably even less than this. So just to summarise what we've shown today, Zerto is a powerful platform for workload mobility with a best-in-class replication engine, enabling cross-platform migrations with zero data loss and industry-leading RTOs. But don't just take our word for it. Our Zerto customers, you can see XPO Logistics, consolidated 21 data centres into 6 in 36 months as part of a growth by acquisition strategy. Over 100 applications were migrated within 90 days by Aaron's. And the disaster avoidance use case we talked about, Spirit ahead of a hurricane proactively migrated all critical applications in less than 3 hours to avoid any downtime due to a natural disaster. So our differentiators from our competitors is we're one platform for workload mobility, disaster recovery and backup. We are simple, we are easy to deploy and use. We have automation and orchestration built into the platform. We use continuous data protection, so it's always on and running. There's no need to schedule replications for different applications. And we support multi and hybrid clouds. And we're innovative as well, and we're constantly upgrading our platform, enhancing it to include new platforms and also new features and functionality. And Gartner also says, we are the best as well. So, here's a quote from Ron Blair, Research and Advisory Director at Gartner, saying no one can do it better. Now, I'm coming to the end of the slides here, so I would like to welcome you to the virtual booth. So if you can come to our virtual booth, we're giving away a prize draw at 3 o'clock, so please come and talk to us about the prize draw. And this week we also had our annual conference, which is ZertoCon, and we announced some new features and the new platforms. So our Zerto for Kubernetes went general availability this week with continuous backup, disaster recovery and long-term retention for Kubernetes applications. We announced our AWS cloud disaster recovery, and this is built for speed and scale, and it allows you to do cross-region and cross-availability zone disaster recovery in AWS. And we also announced that Zerto 9.0, which will be released in the summer, and we've released some key features here. So you can see we've got backup to S3 compatible storage. We've got cloud tiering, so we're able to tier from S3 to Glacier in AWS, and we're able to archive in Azure from the cool or hot tier into the archive tier. We've got immutability in AWS, and we have our automated VM protection and instant VM restore. And you can register for free on the on-demand sessions. And again, like we said, we've got all links to how you want to use Zerto, how to get started with Zerto. We've got free hands-on labs that you can take part in. But what we'd obviously like to do is welcome you to the booth and speak to you about if you've got any migration projects in the pipeline that you think Zerto could help with. So that's the end of my session, and thanks very much for joining.
Thank you so much, Martin. And again, yes, please do go and have a chat with the Zerto team at the virtual exhibition hall today. And great to hear about the new releases as well, Martin. Exciting times for you guys. I'm sure we will be welcoming you back to our Cloud First Summit, which is taking place in June. Really good time in it, and we've not actually launched it yet. It's supposed to be tomorrow, but that's an exclusive for everyone here. But thank you so much for that, Martin. As you say, any questions from the audience, please go and have a chat with the team. A reminder that with everything that you see today, it will be on demand on the platform for 7 days and on our YouTube channel as of tomorrow. We have just, I think, one question that has come in very quickly for yourself, Martin. With events like the SolarWinds and Microsoft Exchange attacks, do you think it will affect people's faith in centralized public cloud systems?
I think so. I think there's a use case for for every platform, and I think that people have been affected by what's happening with SolarWinds, but it shouldn't affect the confidence in the public cloud. They are built to be resilient and available, so I still see many customers wanting to use the public cloud for either a disaster recovery target or to run specific workloads.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Martin. I will let you get back to enjoying that sunshine that I can see in the back garden there. It's a glorious day up here in Scotland. Thank you so much for being with us, and we will see you very, very soon. Thank you very much for your time, Martin.
Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us today and for joining us here in session 2. We will now take a short lunch break. We'll be back in the afternoon with our final session. Some fantastic sessions coming your way this afternoon as well. Please do visit our exhibitors and sponsors in the exhibition area over the lunch break. And we will see you this afternoon. Thank you very much.